What's up, everybody? We're almost there. We're almost to the dead period of the offseason. One more practice, and then the 49ers will be off for about 40 days. Veteran minicamp started today. It continues and finishes tomorrow. In case you've been living under a rock over the past few days, the 49ers cut OTAs short. This was still supposed to be OTAs on the original schedule this week. Veteran minicamp wasn't supposed to be until June 13th to 15th, but they cut OTA short. They moved veteran minicamp to this week. That is or has been standard operating procedure for the 49ers. That also has meant that veterans that didn't show up to OTAs were required to show up now. So we've seen Javon Hargrave on the field for the 49ers, Nick Bosa in the building, although he did not practice. Deebo Samuel arrived during OTAs this year, so he's not one of the players that only showed up for minicamp. But, essentially everybody was on hand for the 49ers at practice today and should be on hand tomorrow. And Nick Bosa will probably just chill out in the weight room, as is his prerogative right now. That's what he does every single year. Don't want to expose him to team drill stuff before you actually have to. Nick Bosa is not one of the players that would actually benefit from that. So speaking of Nick Bosa, yes, he is in the house. Yes, I did write about Nick Bosa. Articles up on The Athletic. Link to this sucker is in the description. So go ahead and check it out. It was awesome. It was so funny. Kyle Shanahan had the ultimate Nick Bosa quote today, and we can just read it straight from the piece right here. Kyle Shanahan says, "Our conversation was the same as they are every year. How are you doing? How's the workout been going? How's Florida? How's the boat? You look tan. Your legs still look big. What are you going to do today?" And Shanahan only shared one of the answers that Nick Bosa gave, and it was to that last question. What are you going to do today? Nick Bosa said, "I'll probably be in the weight room." If you're ever looking for Nick Bosa, the answer is that. He'll probably be in the weight room. It's a good picture to illustrate what I'm talking about, the little flex from Nick Bosa. This guy lives and breathes football, so he lives and breathes the gym. Joey and Nick Bosa, the two brothers, they have a super exclusive weight room back in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. There are only two members of the gym that they're members of. It's their own gym in Florida. And Joey had to come out earlier because the Chargers were requiring him to be at their OTAs. 49ers did the smart thing, let Nick just work out, get himself into superhuman shape in South Florida. Mandatory minicamp is mandatory minicamp, and Bosa still looks like he is in excellent condition. Now, the one exciting thing for Nick Bosa, and we talk about him being in excellent condition, those massive quads, right? I call him Quadzilla. Javon Hargrave is just as strong as far as the lower body, maybe even stronger. When we talk about size of quads, Javon Hargrave's might be just as big or bigger than Nick Bosa's. And we got our first look at Hargrave today. Why don't I pop this open on Twitter so I could show you what I'm talking about? Because I did tweet about this with regards to Javon. So that way you can visualize what I'm talking about here. All right, here we go. Are you prepared for this? Let's make this bigger on the screen. Javon Hargrave. We call Nick Bosa Quadzilla, but we can call Javon Hargrave Quadzilla. That means Quadzilla squared along the 49ers defensive line. There are now two of these monsters who can probably squat, 600 plus. The squat scale sometimes breaks when you're dealing with athletes of this caliber. Drake Jackson's still working toward that. We'll put it that way. Drake Jackson's, I think, at 415. Although Drake Jackson came into the NFL not particularly weight room strong. That was something that the 49ers had to fix, and he's hitting highs right now on his bench press and on his squat, but they're still nowhere near where Nick Bosa and Javon Hargrave are performing, as evidenced by the look at Quadzilla over there, the new guy, Javon Hargrave. Nick Bosa is really excited for Javon to be part of the 49ers. Last year, the 49ers had, and I wrote about this in the article with Nick Bosa. Let's get this sucker back up on the screen because there are a few really good quotes. I think just astute observations from Nick Bosa about how the 49ers operate defensively and how they struggled last year as a defense on the interior. Injury to Eric Armstead, injury to Javon Kinlaw made those guys unavailable more often than they were available in 2022. It was a revolving door for the 49ers on the interior defensive line. And this is the first I've heard it said, but Nick Bosa went out and explained that the interior D line needs more practice time as far as being able to, digest the playbook, know what the 49ers are doing. He said it was harder for the interior D linemen than it is the exterior D linemen, the edge rushers for the 49ers. And lo and behold, the 49ers injuries up front last year were primarily on the inside, right? When I mentioned Armstead, I mentioned Kinlaw. You had guys rotating through. You had guys getting signed and then having to play that week for the 49ers. Nick Bosa today pointed out that you need an entire offseason with Chris Kasarik to truly, properly know how to play on the interior in the 49ers system. And the 49ers only had 3 total sacks from all of their interior defensive linemen combined last year. Again, all the 49ers defensive tackles combined had only 3 sacks on the season last year, and Kevin Givens had 2 of them. Nick Bosa on the edge had 18 and a half sacks alone. So that shows you how weak the 49ers production on the interior was due to those depth concerns, due to those injury issues. And Nick Bosa believes the 49ers have solved those issues. I mean, on the surface, they picked up Javon Hargrave. So yeah, you would say that they took at least a big bite out of that apple, but there's more, right? This team now, that has a domino effect. Javon Kinlaw doesn't have to be a top tier guy anymore. Javon Kinlaw can be a depth piece for the 49ers. Probably, especially given the knee history there, probably a much more comfortable role for him. Kevin Givens is still there. T.Y. McGill, who's one of the guys that did produce a little bit last year, he's back for the 49ers. Kalia Davis, he might be able to give the 49ers a boost that they didn't have before. All of this stuff affects Nick Bosa and potentially positively affects Nick Bosa because he had 18 and a half sacks even while that interior was doing nothing. Now, last year, I will give you this. Last year, the 49ers did have solid complementary edge pieces that they no longer have. Charles Omenihu, Sansa Ebukam, Jordan Willis, Drake Jackson. They still have Drake Jackson. They don't have those other 3 guys, but it just goes to show you how important Drake Jackson's job moving forward is. And along those lines, Nick Bosa said he looks huge. We've talked about Drake Jackson. He is huge. He's a good 13 pounds heavier than he was before. He's added the muscle. He's needed to get stronger. He has gotten stronger. He still is getting stronger. But most importantly, Nick Bosa said that Drake has held on to his speed. He's still moving just as well at 265 as he did last year at 252. And I think that is very, very important. Okay, so Nick Bosa, yes, he was in the house. How about this, though? Deebo Samuel had some harsh self-criticism today. And you know how Deebo talks. You ask him something and he blurts out a couple words. He's really succinct. He's straight to the point. You have to love how direct he is. But he leaves no reason or room to doubt what he just said. Let's put it that way. Deebo Samuel is very, very direct. Well, he was asked today about his 2022 season, and he said it was awful. He said it was just terrible. And this is the line that really stood out to me. Now, this piece is from Matt Barrows, so go ahead and check this out on The Athletic as well. Just going through the tape, it was, look how sluggish and like how bad you look on tape. Talking about himself. Like I said, what happened last offseason kind of played a big role in that. I'll never put nothing on tape like that again. So last offseason, we know what happened last offseason. We're talking about it every day here and in my writing and on podcasts and wherever. Deebo Samuel, through his agent at least, demanded a trade. And there was a big hoopla. It was a big circus, right? Everybody was arguing where Deebo Samuel was going to play next. I think cooler heads prevailed. I think the whole time it was obvious that it was a bluff. The 49ers held the leverage. It was clear that if they wanted to keep Deebo Samuel, and they did want to keep him coming off an epic 2021 season, that they were going to keep him because he was under contract with them. But it all ended up where it should have ended up, with Deebo Samuel staying with the 49ers, getting a nice big contract. But the problem is, while all this smoke and dust was being kicked up, Deebo Samuel wasn't getting in as good of shape as he had gotten the prior offseason. And you remember that he was a complete monster that prior season, 2021. I mean, he single-handedly won football games for the 49ers. He was a force of nature. Deebo was not that type of force of nature in 2022. And today he came out and said straight up that it was because he entered the season not in as good of shape as he had entered the past season because of all the offseason drama. And he was very, very self-critical. Obviously knew that he was going to be speaking in an environment where his words would be replicated and put out onto social media. So there's obviously a little bit of that. Obviously wanted to send a message to the public that, yes, he's taking this seriously. But I have to say that Deebo wasn't bad last year. He just wasn't his 2021 self. He was still a star. He wasn't a superstar. So if he really is back on this track where he's going to have that edge that he had in 2021, look out. Because the 49ers didn't have Christian McCaffrey in 2021, right? They didn't have the version of Brandon Ayuk that they have now. Deebo had a great quote about Brandon Ayuk. You said you can't cover him in a phone booth right now. Ayuk, I mean, and I've watched Ayuk in practice. He caught a couple more long ones today, including one that looked like it would have been a catch and run touchdown had they not blown it dead, because this is not a live tackling kind of thing. Brandon Ayuk, I mean, he's one of the best man coverage beaters in the NFL. His one-on-one moves to shake coverage are elite, and I think they're getting even better. And think about where Ayuk is right now. It's a contract year for him, right? So he's in that same kind of situation as Deebo Samuel was entering 2021. So a couple dynamics at play here for the 49ers. A, you're probably going to get the best you've gotten out of Brandon Ayuk. At least you're going to get the most motivated Brandon Ayuk you've ever gotten. But B, you had Deebo Samuel peak 2 years ago in 2021. Now Deebo's pissed because in 2022 he wasn't as good as he was in 2021. But compound that with the fact that Brandon Ayuk can be in a situation where he surpasses Deebo Samuel as the team's best receiver. They're completely different types of receivers, first of all. So I think this is, on the surface, this is just a dumb fan argument. Who's better, Deebo Samuel or Brandon Ayuk? They're two different types of receivers. Kyle Shanahan's never going to have this argument. He's going to use Deebo Samuel as a blunt force object, and he's going to use Brandon Ayuk as a man coverage beater. So you're apples and oranges. You're going to use both of them. But for the intensive motivation, for all the intents and purposes of how's a guy going to get fired up, what's going to be the fuel to his fire, Deebo Samuel still wants to be recognized as the top guy on the 49ers, right? Brandon Ayuk still wants to be recognized as that rising star who's going to, maybe become the top guy on the 49ers. You love that if you're Kyle Shanahan. You love that both of these guys are in that alpha dog mentality of wanting to be recognized as the number one. So while it might just be fan speak to talk about number one wide receiver this, number one wide receiver that, it's great for motivational purposes to have Deebo Samuel and Brandon Ayuk both hungry. And guess who else is part of this offense? Christian McCaffrey. Guess who else is part of this offense? George Kittle. Guess who else is part of this offense? Juwan Jennings. Oh, I mentioned contract year. Juwan Jennings is in a contract year for the 49ers. Just last night, you probably watched, I was talking about the 2021 49ers-Rams game. I guess it was technically 2022, but it was week 18 of 2021. Obviously, Deebo Samuel made a huge catch from Jimmy Garoppolo's. The 49ers were going to tie that game. But then it was Juwan Jennings who actually tied it. And then Juwan Jennings who made two grown man out pattern catches outside the numbers with some yak attached to them to put the 49ers in control come overtime. And Juwan Jennings is like the fifth or sixth target that I just mentioned. And he's in a contract year for this 2023 49ers team. So this all underscores the point. They're loaded. And they're not only loaded with name recognition, they're loaded with motivated name recognition. There's hunger here. And you saw that hunger today on display from Deebo Samuel at his press conference. Brock Purdy made an appearance today. Don't have this one on video because we're not allowed to video rehabbing players. But Trey Lance and Sam Darnold were throwing the football I think it was during a red zone period. It was a 7-on-7 period during red zone play. Trey Lance made a really, really nice throw to Juwan Jennings. Speaking of the devil, Juwan Jennings. It was just a nice arcing throw, led Juwan Jennings beautifully, caught it near the back pylon. Nice touch on that play from Trey Lance. Just as Lance threw that ball, Brock Purdy came out of the weight room with one of the trainers because he was going to do his run. And it was on the Jimmy Garoppolo field. I call it the Jimmy Garoppolo field because it's the same side practice field as last year where Jimmy was doing all of his throwing, waiting to get traded, while Trey Lance and Brock Purdy were in training camp practices. Well, now the roles were reversed for Brock Purdy. He's rehabbing, so he went out to start doing his runs on the side field while Trey Lance was running the 49ers offense in 7-on-7s. Brock took a quick peek at the really nice throw from Trey Lance, and then he got to work. It was business as usual. It was just cool to see Brock Purdy for the first time in a long time in person on the practice field. Speaking of Lance, it was Sam Darnold QB1 today for the 49ers. You remember all those false reports that, I mean, they look terrible because they all came out last Tuesday or last Wednesday morning, maybe last Tuesday night. And then they all said, oh, Trey Lance is going to be taking all of the first team reps at 49ers OTAs, even though those reports didn't mention that Kyle Shanahan said that that wouldn't be the case. Literally 2 hours after the reports came out, after people got done with their videos and their tweets and their proclamations that, oh my God, Trey Lance is going to take all the first team reps, Sam Darnold took the first team reps at practice last week. We get back out to practice today. It's Tuesday, first day of veteran minicamp. Every single first team rep is taken by Sam Darnold. Now, that doesn't mean that Trey Lance is completely out of favor. The 49ers are going to run Trey Lance in every single first team rep of the 2-day veteran minicamp tomorrow. So Darnold got today, Trey Lance gets tomorrow. I just say this, and it's crazy to me that I have to say it in such simplistic fashion, but I say this because the 49ers are doing exactly what Kyle Shanahan told you they would do several weeks ago. He said they would ultimately split first team reps at practice between Sam Darnold and Trey Lance. And that is indeed exactly what they were doing. Shanahan today again emphasized that this is just the prelude to the competition. You only give yourself a chance to compete. This is like the primary right now, right? You only give yourself a chance to compete in training camp. So you've got to get your name on the ballot. Once your name's on the ballot come training camp, well, Brock Purdy's name is probably going to be on the ballot then, and he is the leader for the 49ers in the clubhouse. So this is, we're just way too early to be in these very ultra specific modes of criticism and modes of declaration. That's why it was just so ridiculous to see people lasering in on one high throw from Trey Lance the other day. Accuracy should never be measured by one throw. It needs to be measured on the aggregate. But the fact that people are focused on accuracy in OTAs, even on the aggregate right now, like they're focused on keeping stats of OTAs. That's something that I don't even have a spreadsheet for. And you guys know I have spreadsheets for pretty damn near everything. But the fact that this has moved to OTAs and it's moved to just zooming in on one throw of OTAs, absolutely crazy. And I think that Trey Lance has bought himself a seat at the table for training camp. I think that Sam Darnold has as well. Brock Purdy already earned that last year. And we're going to see what happens moving forward once training camp does start rolling. But first, we get one more practice tomorrow, and that's going to be with Trey Lance taking the 49ers first team reps. Let me think. Is there anything else that I saw today that was interesting? I mentioned Javon Hargrave. I talked about Deebo Samuel. Danny Gray, a couple longer catches today, but also had a drop. We know what the 49ers offensive line is going to look like. That's not surprising. On defense, Deommodore Lenoir continues to make some plays. You have to like that. Like I said, Drake Jackson looks big. Jair Brown, he's a presence out there for the 49ers. Maybe we can play a little bit of practice clips right here. Why don't we check this one out? That's Charvarius Ward working with Daniel Bullock's 49ers DB coach. You have Tashawn Gibson, veteran safety, and there is Talanoa Hufanga saying hello. These are the DBs getting some of their work in at the special teams portion early in practice. So these are guys that don't have to be working with special teams. So they get their individualized work with Daniel Bullock's DB coach. Last year, he was the safeties coach, and Corey Unlin, the cornerbacks coach, would work with the DBs who didn't have to do special teams. This year, Bullock's has that promotion in title. Steve Wilkes, I'm not really sure where he was during this part, but Steve Wilkes works with corners Obviously, Charvarius is a corner, but I guess Daniel Bullocks, as the DB coach, can work with both safeties and cornerbacks. And then, nice catch there from Talanoa. We saw these DBs display some of the one-handed catching and throwing skills. Hello, Tashawn Gibson. He could throw an accurate football. I don't think that you're going to put any of these guys in at quarterback, though, anytime soon. Not even in that emergency quarterback role. I think that job probably still belongs to Kyle Juszczyk or Christian McCaffrey. Still, it's fun to watch 49ers DBs work out there during that early portion of practice. And then you've got George Kittle. This is George Kittle also working on his quarterback skills. This is also during the special teams portion of practice, tossing the football around with Brian Fleury. All right, we got a few more minutes. Then I got a split. So why don't we move to 49ers Q and A? Have any good questions? Let's roll. I see like so many comments, but now no questions. So let's go. Time for questions. We got a few minutes before I go get some good food. We might do a cool little food show from where I'm going tonight. It's going to be a surprise, though. Jake Moody missed one field goal today from, I believe, 42 yards out. Made everything else. He's got a really strong leg. So I think he's missed twice over the course of OTAs. So he's done fine. Who are the 11 names on the field in a 3-safety set for the 49ers? Well, that's the beauty of a 3-safety set. It could, that third safety can, if he's as versatile as Jair Brown is advertised to be, that third safety can align in a lot of different ways. He can be even an extra edge rusher if you want to bring a guy in to roar around the edge because you're going to be using him as a pass rusher. He can be a weak side linebacker, right? He can be a nickel back. He can be a high post safety. So if you want the 11 names, then you're going to go 4 defensive linemen. So you'll go Bosa, Hargrave, those guys. You're going to go your 2 standard cornerbacks. And I think most likely you're going to use Jair Brown as a third linebacker fill-in, so to speak. He's not going to be a third linebacker, but you'll have 2 linebackers on the field with Dre Greenlaw and Fred Warner. And then that third safety, Jair Brown's going to be in there. I think that, if Deebo Samuel says that he's in better shape, he probably is. These are alpha athletes, guys. They're not just going to say, oh, yeah, I'm in good shape. And you could tell once the games start. You can't hide, especially if you have the playing style that Deebo Samuel has. So he says that he's been taking this off season a little bit more religiously than last year's, and you're just going to have to take his word for it. This guy, he's built like a brick, right? Deebo Samuel walks by you and you say, oh, I get it. This is why people don't like tackling him, because he runs 4.4, 4.5, but he's wide. Like, he's extremely, extremely wide. He's built like a tank. So it obviously takes a lot of physical upkeep to make sure that much mass is in good condition. And that's what this offseason is for. That's what the next 40 days are going to be for the 49ers. It's going to be tough to know if Jordan Mason's blocking is much better until we see the 49ers put on pads, because there's not really enough mono-a-mono contact to judge blocking. So that's what training camp is going to be all about, to answer that next question. 49ers haven't announced the training camp schedule. No. We still got it all of June and most of July to get that. I'm sure we'll come in at least a couple weeks before the start of the season. All right, a couple more. Deommodore Lenoir has stood out to me in the secondary. He really has. He's wearing the number 2 now. He looks like he's in command. He ended last season on the upswing, and I think that means he's going to carry it over into this next season. Deommodore Lenoir has looked solid for the 49ers. If I were a defensive coordinator, what adjustments would I make to better defend Brock Purdy? I'd do what teams started to do to the 49ers last year. Rush hard, bring that extra pressure from the right, the side that Brock Purdy sees, to make him flush the pocket to the left. or at least dare him to flush the pocket, or dare him to try to step up in the pocket, because it doesn't seem like he likes to do that all too much. If you can get Brock Purdy to flush out to the left, to the naked side, that's when his efficiency has gone down. The counter move for Brock Purdy will be to effectively step up. So we'll see if he's able to do that. Question here. Thank you. Should the 49ers sign Justin Houston to support Drake Jackson on third downs? They do have cap space. They don't have to do that right now. They're going to have a long time before training camp, and then they'll have a long training camp, and there's still edge rushers out there. If you do bring in somebody like Justin Houston, you have to say, is Justin Houston going to be able to generate enough pressure to make this worthwhile? Or do you have to bring in somebody younger? Again, Yannick Ngakoue. There are other names out there. So that's the reason why I bring up edge rushers, because, yes, the 49ers might want to bring in another one. All right, everybody, thank you. It's been a nice show. Fun little live 49ers Q&A. We'll talk to you all next time. Like the video, sub to the channel, and obviously do check out the articles, especially this one, the one I wrote about Nick Bosa. All right, everybody. We'll see you very soon. Take care.